Hi everyone, my name is Silenda Lebisi Cousins, owner of LC Attorneys based here in South Africa, where we provide efficiencies for global investors, international clients, the diaspora, and locals looking to invest in business or real estate in South Africa, and most recently through the generational wealth builders in Africa across the continent. Now, I have with me today Mr. Scott, who happens to be one of our clients that we assist. And I think Mr. Scott has got a lot of valuable information to share because of his experience before we met. And I'm gonna give Mr. Scott the opportunity to just introduce himself. He's from America. He is a retiree who's living in Johannesburg, and we're going to be talking a lot more about his property that he purchased in Johannesburg and how his experience has been. So, Mr. Scott, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to our listeners, and welcome to the Generational Wealth Builders Show.
My pleasure. I enjoy being here and having the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Scott. So I already told you what I want, what I think is going to be valuable for us to share with people. So before we met, you undertook the process of buying property in Johannesburg. And I think, coming from the States, you got to realize very fast how things are different here. We've spoken about it many times. I love how you have such a positive outlook on life, and that, that ability to turn any negative experience into a positive. That's what I've picked up from the time that I've known you and that I've assisted you, under LCA. So I suppose my first question that I want to, talk to you about is basically when you bought property in South Africa, how confident did you feel about the process of buying property here in a country that you are unfamiliar with?
Well, I purchased an apartment in Johannesburg last June 2024. And
Mm-hmm.
so in November of 2024. So I've been in Johannesburg for a little over a year now. And with that
Mm-hmm.
experience, I realized all the things that I didn't know when I made my
Mm-hmm.
in June of 2024.
Yeah. And there's quite a lot that we're going to unpack, especially about the process. And maybe we can even start by asking you, did you expect the process to take as long as it took? And maybe tell us a little bit about what your expectations were there versus what you actually got.
No, my experience with the process was based on my history and living in the United States. So I really had no reasonable history about the process. And so it was a
Mm-hmm.
cash purchase. And I thought, based on my experience in the United States with a cash purchase, you receive the property rather quickly. But it took almost 4 months before I was
Mm-hmm.
into the apartment.
Yeah. And that is one thing that most people are not, I believe, prepared enough to, to understand how long it's gonna take, and also to know what to expect. And I think that is where information is important when one is buying property. The people that you are dealing with would need to equip you and obviously give you all of that information so you can know what to expect. And then another thing I want to talk to you about, which has been, one issue that I felt very passionate to assist you with because I felt it was very unfair, and also you didn't deserve to experience that, especially because you paid for the property that you purchased, and I believe that when people pay for things they should get what they pay for. You purchased property that you believed came with a parking bay, but what ended up happening was a completely different story. I mean, we had to, even though we were not part of the process when you purchased, we had to come in there and send some letters and some emails to the management and the body corporate. Just maybe unpack a little bit about, that experience with the parking bay. You have a car, but you could not even park your car in the property that you bought, within the sectional title that you bought because of how things were done. And I think some of the things could have really been, avoided had you been equipped with the information. Because when buying property in South Africa, if you are buying in a sectional title scheme, the first question that we always ask when we are going through the due diligence framework is, does it come with a parking bay, and how is this parking bay allocated? And then we get the documentation that will prove the existence of the parking bay. So we check, there's a list that we go through to make sure that when you receive the ownership of the unit, you also receive, that is what we call an exclusive use area. So were you able to get your unit and your parking, or did it, take a bit more energy and effort to end up with a parking bay?
Well, the first problem that I had, I didn't realize it was a problem at the time, but I was
Mm-hmm.
relying on my experience in the United States. And as a buyer in the
Mm-hmm.
United States, the buyer has a representative as well as the seller. That's not the case
Mm-hmm.
in Africa. And
Yeah.
I, the seller and realtor, if I needed a realtor or an attorney, he says, no, of course you don't. And so
Mm.
that was the information that I got. And I didn't realize some of the things that I signed as a result of
Mm.
the process. And one of the things that I signed was that all the promises that were made to me by the selling agent were not valid in my contract. And so the advertisement included parking that I saw,
Mm.
and I assumed that I would get parking. And I was told that I would get parking. And there was a reassignment process going on within the complex that I bought, and I would get my parking. So I bought a car in advance, and until
Mm.
this was in June, and I arrived in November. And I assumed I had a friend storing the car for me until when I got here, and then I would move it into my parking. And to this day, I have not been assigned a parking space
Yeah, that is,
yet.
even though in theory you have a parking bay, but you actually can't even park your car in that parking bay.
That's correct. I don't have one that's with my bay unit because the reassignment has not occurred yet. So it's very disappointing, but now
Mm.
is that I did need representation at that time and what the benefits of representation would have been.
Yeah, no, and Mr. Scott, that's exactly why I'm so happy that we created the prestige framework and the due diligence, particularly for buyers. Property buyers also ought to be protected. And what I find is that in South Africa, there's a and in many other parts of the world, to be quite honest, because the person that's selling the property owns it. There's a lot of emphasis on, meeting their expectations, doing what they need to have done. And the buyer is generally disregarded. And I think it's very important as the buyer to also understand the power that you have. You are bringing resources and money into the transaction. And so whatever you get is supposed to meet a certain level, of satisfaction for you as a buyer. So that is why we created the prestige framework. And I think the way the interview is starting, it sounds like, it's starting with sad news, but there's a positive at the end of the story, because we are working together now, and we are still in the process of helping you secure your second property. And I want you to talk about the experiences, when we look at what you know now versus what you didn't know then, in terms of going into this transaction and looking at everything that we went through. I mean, the inspection that is about to happen, the way the offer is being made, the due diligence in general, and how we've unpacked a lot of things, starting with running the numbers. Maybe let's get there, into the next transaction, to say, how does it make you feel knowing that you can now enter into this transaction with all this information that you didn't have initially when you were doing it alone? What does it give you? Confidence? Does it make you feel a bit more assured than you were the first time, especially when considering all the information we've been unpacking?
Well, an informed decision is a better decision.
Mm.
And so the information that I have now for my second transaction is 100% more than I had in the first transaction. I
Yeah.
was I couldn't appreciate the difference between dollars and rand,
Mm-hmm.
and the price of the apartment in rand was similar to the cost of a car that I bought in the United States. So I looked at it as a similar type transaction.
Mm,
Now I'm not as eager to pay the money and expect results. I want information before
yeah.
I make payments, and
Yeah.
that I have 100% more information with this second transaction. And so
Mm-hmm.
is that much higher that I'm going to get everything that I anticipate that I should.
I love that. I really love that. And especially when you say you have more information, and I know you mean in respect of everything, including the costs, because I'm not sure how the first one was explained, but now you know that, and this is one thing that I say to all my clients, and I said to you, Mr. Scott, you need to take your time. And I know it's nice when you viewed the property, it's a lovely one, but I love how diligent and careful you are now, and you are getting all the information. And you were saying, I need to make sure that there's no moisture happening in the basement, that the ventilation is fine, and I love that. I love to see that, because all of those things are gonna help you to be prepared to make the offer. And it's one thing to want all of those things to happen, but if they are not written down in the offer, which is what we are doing as we help you make the offer, then they're not going to be useful for you, because they're not going to be binding to the other party. So yeah, I just love the fact that now you get to have all of that information, and you can use it, and you can even ask more questions, like you have been doing, and we can actually obtain those answers for you. And so, yeah, I want to find out about even the, obtaining information about the costs. Finding ways to, create buffers, or, approach everything smartly. Would you say that the way it's done in America when you're buying property, and the finances involved, is it similar? Because you mentioned that in America you get to have a buyer's representative, but then you obviously now have us helping you in the process, where we are attorneys and we are helping you, representing you from start to finish. Are you? Does that feel a little bit like? At least now I have somebody that has my best interest at heart, and does it make the process a bit better for you? I guess that's what I want to know, because we are not at all representing the seller. When we represent the buyer, we only focus on that to avoid conflict of interest. And I think that's something that most people don't understand when they are dealing with a realtor. And realtors, obviously, they are amazing. They give you access to the property you want, they give you information, but it's always good to know that they are not being paid by you to do the work. So does it, what difference does it make when you know that, okay, now I'm dealing with people who actually exclusively represent me in this process?
Well, it's important to have an advocate in any
Yeah.
situation you're in. And I had a friend
Mm-hmm.
here from Zim, and he
Mm-hmm.
was me, and he helped me negotiate the price, because
Mm-hmm.
once I spoke in my American accent, then the price would go up. But having my
Oh,
friend negotiate for me, the price went down. But he
yeah.
was not professional, and
Yeah.
so having a professional advocate on your behalf levels the table, and
Mm,
position to have effective negotiations on your behalf and get more facts before you sign and make a commitment.
I love that.
So, through the process and what I learned from you is that do not sign
Mm.
before you get the information and you're 100% sure about what you want to do.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I love that. Sure. So, what I want to get into now is, just get deeper into the cost of not knowing, I want to find out, with your initial transaction, what do you think was the biggest mistake you made during the transaction? Because it's one thing to say, they didn't give me this or they didn't do that. But sometimes when you look at the situation, you can actually say, oh, I also maybe shouldn't have done that there, or maybe I shouldn't have listened when I was told I don't need a lawyer. So what would you say was your biggest mistake from the initial transaction?
I think my biggest mistake was not having any information about the buying process in South
Mm-hmm.
Africa. I knew
Mm-hmm.
nothing about sectional titles. And I found out how crucial it is to learn about the sectional title and the entity in which you're trying to buy in, because the reliability of the managing agents and that sort of thing is critical. And you may want to select a place by how well it's managed as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
the place looks. And I'm
Yeah.
finding tremendously. Now I know a lot about, the sectional title process and that sort of thing, and how important it is to evaluate the management of the property that you're trying to purchase. That is just as important or more important, especially with a sectional title.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Sure. I love the difference. The gap has really been bridged. And knowing you, I mean, you have such an analytical mind, and also having seen how you've been engaging with this process now for the second time, I think there's definitely quite a big difference, and there's a lot that is working in your favor now. Absolutely. So, the last thing that I'm gonna ask you, of course, we've covered a lot of things in the transaction, preparing to make this offer that we're now going to be helping you make for the second time. We've covered finances, we've covered the contract itself and what every clause, we went through everything. You got the financials, and I just want to applaud you because you've been scrutinizing every document. So we obtained the financials of the scheme, and most people don't know that when you are buying when you're buying, Americans call it a condo. When you're buying a condo, you're buying in a sectional title scheme. So there's shared responsibility in respect of the common property. And so there's levies that you pay. So most people are not aware of how that process works. But now this time you got to see the body corporate rules that will regulate all the owners, including yourself, once you buy into that estate. It can be an estate or a sectional title. And also knowing that there's the HOA that affects how you do certain things, because it's an estate. You can build, but you can build a certain way, etc., etc. So, would you say that no, now that you know everything that you know, you prefer buying into a gated community, like you've had a sectional title before, that's where you are, and you are buying into an estate once again where there's going to be shared common areas, but now this one is a bit different because you have your own big piece of land within that estate. So would you say this is the kind of setup that you prefer? Because in South Africa, we also have freestanding properties where there's no body corporate, there's no HOA, there's nothing. Would you say that, this is the preference when it comes to, purchasing freestanding properties that are standalone, not in an estate, versus sectional title where there's shared common properties? Which one do you think is a preference for you?
I think the freestanding property is more consistent with the properties that I've owned throughout my life in the United
Mm-hmm.
States or familiar with. But I
Mm-hmm.
think title can work, but you really have to do the due diligence to
Do they?
find exactly what you're getting into, because there can be some special levies down the road,
Mm-hmm.
replace old equipment,
Yeah.
uh, lifts, elevators, as we call them in the United States, and so, but you're sharing that as a group, and that can be a good situation to be in, but
Mm.
do more work to find out exactly what the long-term consequences can be, with getting
Mm-hmm.
title, and lesser so, with a freestanding building, because that freestanding building is my responsibility as
Yeah.
opposed to the group's responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. I really love how everything is unfolding now. And thank you so much for the opportunity to also work with you and and serve you. We really love that. And so the last thing I want to ask is, what advice would you give someone that's coming from outside South Africa, maybe in your position initially when you first got here, doesn't know anything? What would you tell them if they're excited, they just got here, they're looking to find a home or start whatever it is they want to start? What would you say to them? Or what did you say to yourself before everything?
What I would say to myself last year, and what I would say to those individuals that are considering coming to South Africa to look for property, take your time.
Yeah,
Do not be in a rush.
yeah.
I was told by a very wise woman that there will always be a property to buy. So don't be in a rush to buy property.
I love that. I love that. And I love that my clients appreciate when I say that to them. Like, take your time. It's not going anywhere. There will always be property. You just need to make sure you're not making a mistake. And it's so good. It saves you a lot of time, energy, and money when you listen to that advice. So thank you so much for your time, Mr. Scott. We really appreciate it. And I am sure that anyone that's going to be watching this is going to find a lot of value in it. So, yeah, thank you so much for taking time on a Sunday to speak to me. I appreciate you, and we will talk again.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Bye.